In this session, I'm going to discuss and demonstrate an alternate method for a single firefighter to apply a full body hasty harness to an unconscious victim. Now obviously there are a lot of different methods and variations for using webbing to perform victim rescue. What I like about this version is that it works very well for horizontal extraction or dragging a victim, as well as it does for vertical extraction, or if you got to pull a victim out of a hole or lower them out a window or off a roof. An added benefit of using a full body harness is that it encompasses both the legs and waist as well as the chest and shoulders. So if you tie it correctly, you don't have to worry about the victim coming out of it. And this can be especially important if you're performing a vertical rescue where there's a potential for the victim to become inverted. What's also nice about this harness is it works just as well on a civilian as it does with a firefighter wearing an scba. And it doesn't matter if that victim is supine, lying on their back as you see here, or prone, lying on their stomach. You can apply this harness just as effectively on a victim in either position. Now this harness is just one of the two that I train and practice with. Again, it's intended for the unconscious victim, and we finish or tie the harness off behind their head. I've shown this version quite a few times in previous videos, but I've typically talked about it being more efficient to apply with 2 to 3 firefighters than it is for one. As a result, I've had quite a few subscribers ask me if there is a faster or more efficient way for just one firefighter to apply it. So the intent of this video is to address and demonstrate exactly that. Now, I'm going to be working with the Ruth Lee. This is a soft-sided rescue mannequin, and in my opinion, it's one of the best ones on the market. It being soft-sided, it has a feel and range of motion that is far superior to many of the other rescue mannequins that are out there. You can just see it acts and behaves very similar to an unconscious victim. You know, and that realism is what we're looking for when we're practicing victim rescue procedures. The one thing that the Ruth Lee doesn't have is hands. And that can be an issue because the hands are a potential problematic area when working with the webbing. The fingers are one location where the webbing can get hung up or snagged on. So to compensate for that, we just put firefighting gloves on the end of the Ruth Lee's arms. Now you can better secure these with either rope or tape, but the whole point of this is to make the mannequin more realistic and force the rescuer to have to kind of contend with this potential problematic area. And I'll explain that in a little bit more detail later on in the video on what you got to be aware of when working with the webbing. So how this is all going to play out is I'm going to do 2 full-speed demonstrations. One applying the webbing on a simulated unconscious civilian laying on their back, and one to a firefighter laying on their stomach with an scba. Hopefully that will give you a perspective on how quick and efficiently this harness can be applied to either victim in either position. When I'm done with the demonstrations, I'm going to go through the harness very slowly and methodically so you can see all the elements involved. In case anyone's wondering what type of webbing I use, I carry 3 links. To understand how I store them, I'm going to go through my gear very quickly. On the left chest of my coat I have a pocket for my portable radio. Inside this pocket I also carry a spare battery for a thermal imaging camera, which I'm required to have as the officer. I also carry an additional wire cutting tool. I don't have any pockets on the waist section of my coat, but I do have 2 pockets on my pants. In the right pocket I carry a personal escape system. In my left I carry additional wire cutting tools, a rescue spanner wrench, and one of my 3 sections of webbing. This one specifically is a 5.5 foot loop stored in a straight roll without a carabiner. As you can see, my pockets are pretty much maxed out, so I carry my other 2 sections of webbing on my escape belt. The second link is a 5-foot strap. Now, on both ends of this strap I have a stitched loop with a carabiner. The carabiner specifically is a black diamond. It's an aluminum key-style screw lock. It's very lightweight, strong, easy to operate with a firefighting glove, and it's also relatively inexpensive. Each one of these carabiners is less than $10. The strap itself is stored in a single daisy chain. My third, final, and main section of webbing is a 9-foot loop with a single carabiner. This section of webbing is made from a 20-foot length of 1-inch tubular, and it's stored in a double-up daisy chain. Now some firefighters prefer their main section of webbing to be made from a 25-foot length of webbing. Really, it's personal preference. But at minimum, when you're tying a full body hasty harness around a victim, you're going to want to have a 9-foot loop, and that's what we're going to be working with today. In the end, guys, Whatever type of webbing you go with, the length, how you store it is totally personal preference. Just be consistent. Store it in the same manner every single time so it deploys consistently each and every time. With that being said, let's take a look at donning this harness full speed. Okay, hopefully those demonstrations gave you a perspective on how quick and efficiently a single firefighter can apply a hasty harness to a civilian or a firefighter in either position. The next thing I want to do is go through how to apply the webbing nice and slowly. Now, I'm always going to encourage students to practice in full protective equipment. The concept there is being practice like you play. If you don't have full gear, at minimum, wear your firefighting gloves. We all know when we have our gloves on, we don't have the same dexterity and fine motor skills that we have when we're not wearing them. But this is what we're going to have on when we're in the field. So make it as realistic as possible. The next thing that I would highly encourage is that you don't pre-deploy your webbing. However you store it, however you carry it, if it's a straight roll in your pocket, if it's a daisy chain on your belt or harness, that's where you want to start. And the rationale behind it is it's going to allow you to confirm whether you're doing it right or if you need to make some changes. In other words, hey, if your webbing isn't deploying very quickly and efficiently, maybe you got to tweak something. So start from square one. Okay, make this as realistic as possible. Now, when I'm starting, it doesn't matter whether the victim is supine on their back or prone on their stomach. I want to be facing the feet, and I want to straddle the legs. Now, I'm starting with my webbing on my belt. I keep my carabiners in the unlocked position. That way, if any of my webbing gets entangled on my belt, it's very easy for me to ditch. It's very easy for me to doff when I'm ready for deployment. I have them set up for a forward release. It's just very easy to do. Falls in line with your range of motion. When I remove my carabiner, I'm going to hold it right at the base. In this case, for me, the water knot is away from my body. I'm holding the carabiner right at the base, and I'm going to come to the safety, or the release point. And I'm going to unsnap the webbing. I let go of it. The next thing that I'm going to do is come to the water knot, and I'm going to offset it. Now, this isn't a critical step, but I like to do it because it reduces the bulk by the carabiner. And this will become important when you're finishing the webbing, tying it off behind the victim's head. Reducing that bulk makes it a little easier. One thing nice about the way I'm doing this is that I never let go of the webbing. My hand is in constant contact with it at all times. And this can be important when you're working in reduced visibility. If you let go of the webbing completely, it's going to be very difficult to find it being flat with your firefighting gloves on. So my left hand never lets go of the webbing, and it acts as a reference point. So as I offset that water knot, I let go of the webbing and I come back to that hand. And I'm going to go in between both sections of webbing. Okay? Holding the carabiner at the base, I grab, in this case, the left leg. I'm going to lift it up, and I want to get that bottom webbing loop underneath the cuff of the pants, which can be very important when you're dealing with a firefighter, because the bunker gear is a little bit more bulky than just regular street clothes. But get that bottom length of webbing underneath the cuff of the pants. Now I come back to that left hand and I grab the top section of webbing. Not this bottom one, but the top one. And I come to the opposite leg. In this case, it's the right. I'm going to lift that heel up, and I want to get it underneath the other cuff of pants. You notice that my hands are in an underhand grip. Now I'm going to balance the webbing out. Okay? As you can see, I have the first X established in between the legs. The next thing I'm going to do, once the webbing's balanced out, is I'm going to slide it up underneath the legs. Almost like you're seesawing it up. It's very important to get this bottom length of webbing, the section of webbing on each side that's closest to the ground or the floor, underneath the victim's body. In this case, since they're on their back, you want to slide it underneath their butt. I work the webbing up. I'm still in an underhand grip. Once I balance it out the head, I'm going to immediately switch into an overhand grip. And now you can see the X on the right and left. These loops are going to be used to capture the hands and the arms. So now I come back. And if you can do this in one move, if you can grab the hands, lift them up, and capture the fingers and the wrist and get the webbing underneath the forearms, that's great. But sometimes it's hit or miss depending on how the hands are positioned. So I'm going to give you another tip. Okay? And this will work every single time. Come up, webbing's balanced out, flip to an overhand grip, make the next loop on each side for the arms, come over. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this hand up. So I'm lifting the right arm up with my left hand, never letting go of the webbing. I'm bringing this loop over that right hand and getting it past the hand and fingers. Okay? Now I cross over. I still have that X. Hard to see, it's still there though. I come over to this arm, the left arm, I grab it with my right hand and I bring the left loop over. Now I've definitely captured the hands and got past the fingers. The next step is to get low and slide that lower webbing loop. Just like I do with the legs, you want to slide that lower webbing loop on each side underneath the arms and the shoulders. So you're seesawing the webbing up. You notice that it starts to come up in between the legs now as well. Seesawing that, sliding it up, keeping the webbing balanced. The next step, really the final step, is to finish and size the webbing behind the victim's head. When I talk about finishing, that means I'm going to connect both ends of the webbing together and then customize the size of the harness to the size of the victim. When they're laying on their back, I'm going to want to sit them up. Notice my hand positioning. I'm still in an overhand grip. I'm holding the base of the carabiner, but now the gate is facing up. Clip in. Then grab the head of the carabiner and start to twist it. As you're twisting it, pull on the webbing at the same time. It's also a good idea to check the webbing at the legs and waist, and shoulders and chest to make sure it's still secure. As you're pulling on the webbing, you're continuing to twist it. This is what's customizing the size of the harness to the victim. You want to make it tight. If you're doing a vertical extraction, it has to be real tight. Once you get it to where you want it, you're going to grab the top and bottom webbing loops. In this case, I'm grabbing them on the right because I'm working on the left side. It's just easier for me. Carabiner gate's facing up still. I'm going to push it toward the body and snap both the bottom and top sections of webbing into the gate. Now, holding this, you can just take your left hand with an upward motion, lock off the gate, and that secures it. If I'm just going to drag this victim out, you can grab the bottom sections on the right and left of the webbing. This is where you want to grab and just pull them out. If you're going to be doing a vertical extraction, the easiest thing to do is just simply clip right into this carabiner with your rescue system. Finishing the webbing when the victim is prone or on their stomach is actually easier because you don't have to worry about sitting the victim up. The steps are still the same. You're going to clip in, pull, and twist on the webbing as you check it at the legs and shoulders to make sure it's secure. Continue to pull and twist until you get it to the size you want it. Clip in, making sure that you capture that top and bottom section, and then lock off. Now you may be wondering, why would we connect the webbing when the victim is prone or on their stomach? And there's a couple reasons. First of all, you have immediate and easy access to behind the head, so finishing the webbing, again, is easier. Another reason might be having a victim trapped on an upper floor, whether it's a firefighter or a civilian. Let's say you can't get them down the interior stairwell and there's not a ladder immediately available. Time is of the essence. You made a decision to lower this victim out with an escape system. Having them in this orientation or position will make for an easier extraction. You're simply going to hook your escape system in, lift the victim's legs up to the sill, lower them out. They're going to fold at the waist, and that transition out the window is going to be much smoother and more efficient. So bottom line, how you attach this harness is going to be based on what position you find the victim and what method of extraction you're going to use. To wrap things up, I want to address a question or concern some viewers may have about twisting the webbing. In other words, does twisting the webbing affect the strength of the harness or make it weaker? Honestly, I can't give you a definitive answer because I haven't come across any testing on it. But to give you some peace of mind, let's talk about some numbers. First of all, 1-inch tubular webbing has a minimum breaking strength of 4,000 pounds. So to start with, it's exceptionally strong. But with that being said, let's look at things from a worst case scenario. Let's say that this harness is soaking wet, and nylon does lose strength when it gets wet. Let's also say that the webbing isn't in perfect condition. Let's say it's pretty beat up. And third, let's say we do lose a fair amount of strength when we twist the webbing. Now I'm just going to throw out a crazy number. Let's just say we lose 3/4 of the overall strength of this harness when we take into consideration those three factors. So let's say we're at 1,000 pounds. If this victim weighs 300 pounds, we're still over a 3-to-1 safety factor. And to me that's plenty. Especially if you would consider this victim would die if we didn't do anything. What's more important to me than the strength of this harness is making sure that it's secure and tight. Especially if I'm going to be lowering the victim off a roof or out a window from an upper floor. The whole point of twisting this webbing is to make sure it's secure and that you can do it quickly and efficiently when you're working in a fire environment and reduce visibility. That's the whole point of it. If I'm applying this harness to a student for a belay system, I'm not going to twist it to size it. I'm going to tie a nice dressed out knot, make sure it's secure and in order. That's about the best answer I can give. Hopefully it helps. Thanks for watching.